Hey friends, it's Christy back with you on the Lawnfawn YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Fangtastic Friends, Ugly and Bright, Beachy Christmas, Snow Much Fun, Cheery Christmas, and Ready Set Snow. I've stamped those images out with Lawnfawn Jet Black ink on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. So I know you guys must be thinking, Christy, what are you doing using a Halloween stamp set for Christmas cards? But I don't know, you guys. I absolutely fell in love with these bats when they came out. I only had a chance to make one card with them before Halloween was over, and I didn't want to wait a whole entire year before I could use them again. So I decided to get inventive and make a Christmas card. Bats deserve to have a nice holiday too. So I am going to color these guys using some N markers, using N1, N3, and N5. So I think you could use any gray combo for these guys and it would look really cute. You could even do some browns. I've even done blue violets in the past and I really liked how that turned out. But today I decided to go with the neutral grays because they are a bit more cooler toned, so they're going to suit this nighttime scene that I'm going to be doing, but they have a bit of warmth to them as well. They're warmer than the cool grays, which I typically prefer to use for critters. I like to have that little bit of warmth to them to just make them look like living beings. So I'm starting with the N5 and laying in my shadows. I'm going to color all of these guys exactly the same, using that wherever any body part is kind of overlapping another one, and then blending out with the N3 as the midtone. I'll use the N1 for the highlight, and I'm also going to add a little color to the insides of their ears with that N1. I will color over that later on, but I wanted to have a little bit of that gray tone in there to make it look a bit more realistic rather than just having the straight up pink. I'm also using the N5 at the very top of the wing where the bone is because it would be thicker there, and then putting the highlight down toward the bottom where the skin would be more translucent, where it's kind of stretched over that bone structure. Then I'm going to come in with the RV10 and RV11, like I mentioned, to just add a little pink to the insides of their ears, starting with the RV11, and then I'm also going to give them some rosy cheeks with these shades. So just doing a little oval shape on each of their cheeks. And then I'll use the RV10 to blend out the ears and also just trace around the edge of the cheek so that it kind of fades into that gray that I've used for their skin. Then I'm going to move on to my tree branches, and I'm going to use E23, E25, and E27 for that. In this scene, I'm going to have a moon that is going to be above these branches, so I'm putting the shadow at the bottom edge of the branch with the E27 on both of those, and then I'm going to blend out with the E25, just working my way up, filling in the smaller branches that wouldn't get quite as much highlight because they're kind of underneath other branches there. And then I'll use the E23 for the highlight, just filling in the rest of that white space. And then I want to add a bit more detail to these and just give them some wood grain texture. So I'm going to darken up things by adding in the E29, so it's going to match very well, but stand out against those other browns. And I'm just going to do some little swirls, some semicircles, and some dash lines to just add that texture like I mentioned, so it looks more like bark from a tree. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to do the leaves. Now, normally there's not very many leaves on trees in winter, so I decided to do like the last little remaining leaves left over from the fall. So I went with some kind of goldeny brown tones. I went with YR21, YR23 and YR27. Using the YR27 at the bottom of each leaf, just doing it the same way that I did the tree branches, blending up with the YR23 and then using the YR21 for the highlight. Next, I'm going to bring in some reds, and I want to go pretty traditional with the color palette for this card, especially since I'm going so non-traditional with the imagery in this scene with those adorable bats. So I'm using my favorite Christmas red combo, which is R24, R29, and R39, and I'm going to do quite a few of these little accessory images that I've gathered from all these different stamp sets. So I'm starting with the R39 for the darkest. I'm going to do the stockings, I'll do some ornaments, I'll do the main part of one of the ornaments, the stripe on another ornament. I'm going to do some of the ribbons and one of the gifts in red. Just little pops here and there. Of course, the Santa hat down at the bottom and every other stripe on that candy cane. This is one of the things that I absolutely adore about Lawn Fawn is that you are able to pull all of these images from all these different stamp sets, and the scale of the images just works so beautifully together between all the different sets. It really gives you so many different possibilities because you're able to take these sets that were absolutely not intended to be used together and really let your imagination run wild, because there's just so many little bits and pieces that you can take from the different things and pull together and create something completely unique. I just love that. Basically, if you're able to dream it up, you can create it, and I just love that. I think it's fabulous. So I'm going to finish up these last few images here. Like I mentioned, the red bows on two of the gifts, and then the wrapping paper on one of the gifts I'm going to do with this same red combo. And then I'm going to switch up to a traditional Christmas green using G14, G16, and G29. So I'm going to hop around here and do various extra little images. I'm going to do the stripe on the red ornament. I'm going to do another ornament. I'll do the main part, the top and the bottom. I'm going to put a green bow on my red Christmas gift. And then I'm going to do another one of the Christmas gifts to be green as well once I finish these up. So I'm just starting with the G29 as my darkest. That one has a lot of depth to it, so it's a great shade to have in the shadows. And then I'm blending that out with the G16 and then using the G14 as the highlight. That G14 has a bit of a yellow tone in it, which really brightens up this combo. So I think it really looks like a nice traditional Christmas green. I'm going to do one more of these little gifts with the green wrapping paper, the separate one here. And then I'm going to move on to another combo. I wanted to throw one more in there because I still had more images and I wanted to kind of break up the red and green a little bit. I decided to go with blue since I'm going to have a nighttime sky, so it kind of goes with that. So I ended up choosing B24, B26, and B29. It's a very vibrant, like almost like a French blue, a little bit lighter than a navy. So I'm going to do the last ornament, the top and bottom of that, and then the last stripe on the green ornament. I'll do the bow on the green gift and then the wrapping paper on that center gift. And then I wanted to use the C1 to just add a little bit of shading to the white parts, also color in the little tops of the ornaments. And it's just going to add like the tiniest little bit of definition there. And then I wanted to add more detail to my Christmas gifts, so I'm taking a white gel pen. I'm going to do some little polka dots on the blue gift, and then I'm doing stripes on the red gift, just going from like the bottom right to the top left, just thin little lines there and then connecting them on the underside of the gift below the ribbon. And then for the smaller green gift, I decided to do something similar. I'm starting with the stripes, but I'm going to turn it into a plaid by just going the opposite direction on that. And then the final gift, I decided to go back to the polka dots. So just doing little tiny circles on that just gives it a little extra something. It's an extra step you don't have to do, but I think it's fun. I'm also going to use that white gel pen to just fill in the little fangs for my bats to make them nice and white again. And then I'll take a black gel pen. I'm going to get that started because mine is quite dry. And I will go over the eyes of my bat that has them open. And then I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm taking a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock and I'm going to use the nighttime sky stencil, just the moon mask from that right now. Mine still has removable adhesive on the back from the last time that I used it. And then I'm going to bring in some salvaged patina distress oxide ink and I'm going to create like a little bit of a glow around that moon. So I'm not quite going all the way up to that mask. I'm leaving a white border there for now that will get covered up later on, but I wanted to keep that nice and light. Then I'm going to darken that up using some salty ocean and I'll bring that in from the edges as well, but just not quite as far as the salvage patina. I'm not going to blend back out in the reverse this time because I want to keep that glow nice and light. I'm just going to continue working my way from lightest to darkest, and then I'll work my way back down in the reverse to fill everything back in and make sure I have a nice smooth blend. So next I'm using salvage patina to add a bit of that dark sky like I mentioned, just sticking closer to the outside edges, not using near as much of that. And then I wanted to darken that up even further with some black soot. This is going to really make the rest of those colors pop. Just a tiny bit at the top two corners, but then I'm going to bring that in a little bit further down at the bottom, kind of creating that circular kind of vignette around the moon there. So now that I have all 4 shades on there, I'm going to work my way back in the reverse to blend everything out. So I'm going back to my chipped sapphire and then back to the salty ocean. And then I'll use that salvage patina. And this time I'm going to cover up the white that I left. So I only have 1 layer of that ink closest to the moon, which is going to really help it look like it's glowing. So I'm just going to continue blending that until everything looks nice and smooth. And then I wanted to distress this a bit. So I'm going to take some clean water and spritz it onto an acrylic block just to give me a little bit more control. I'll pick that up with a paintbrush and splatter that all over the background. I'm still keeping that moon mask in place at this time. So I'm going to splatter that, let that dry for maybe 30 seconds or so, and then I'll blot that up with a paper towel. It's just going to give some nice little flecks in that background. And then I wanted to add like a pearlized shimmer. So I'm taking my gansai tambi starry colors and I'm taking this pearl shade at the end, mixing that up with some water, and I'm going to flick that all over the background as well. Just making sure I get a variation of droplets. I want some that are really fine and then some that are a little bit larger. So I'm also tapping it against my finger, which also gives you like different sizes, and also depends how close or how far away you flick that paintbrush. Then I wanted to add some really bright white dots, so I'm taking some Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White and mixing that up with the water that was still on my block and then tapping that off the side as well. So it's going to look like either a starry or snowy sky depending on what you want it to be. So now I'm going to take my EK Success reverse tweezers and just carefully remove that mask so I don't smear anything with my fingers. And then I'm going to take my salvaged patina distress oxide ink blending tool and just add a little bit of that to the center of the moon to give that kind of like a glow. It just makes it look more like a moon instead of just like an empty white spot. And then I'm going to flick some water on that as well in the center, just in that little bit of blue, so that it has like some little variations in that as well. And then I'm going to set this panel aside to dry completely. In the meantime, I'm going to start working on my sentiment, and I wanted to heat emboss that. So I'm taking some black licorice cardstock and treating that with my Rabbit Hole Designs powder tool. I'm going to build a sentiment using Fangtastic Friends and Beachy Christmas. So I'm inking that up with some Versamark ink, and I have used a piece of post-it tape to mask off the word day from the top part. So it will read, "Have a Fangtastic Christmas." So once I have that stamped out, I'm going to coat that with some white embossing powder. Make sure that it is nice and covered so that I get a nice bold sentiment. I'm going to tap off any excess, and then there was just a few little bits that I'm going to remove with my fingernail, and then I will heat set this. I like to go from the back first to minimize the warping and then bring that to the front until everything is white and shiny. And then I'm going to work on my card base. I'm using some Barn Red cardstock, and I'm going to stamp in jet black ink, which is the same ink that I stamped my images in for Copic coloring. I'm using the smaller branch from Fangtastic Friends, and then the sentiment is from Beachy Christmas. It says, "Have a relaxing holiday." And then I took another bat and a stocking and hung them from that little branch. I think that's really cute. So then I trimmed down my background using the outside in stitch rectangle stackables. And now that my background is dry, I wanted to add some more detail using the rest of that stencil. And I wasn't careful, so I ended up getting a little bit of extra ink on there, but I just took a baby wipe and wiped that off. Since it's Bristol smooth surface cardstock, that's really easy to do. So now I'm ready to start assembling. I'm going to take that background and glue that to my card front using the glue tube. So I'm going to get that bright red cardstock showing through on the outside, which is going to frame up the scene, but also tie back to all of those Christmas red images that I've added. I've added foam tape to the back of almost all of my images, and now I'm going to start setting this scene here. I'm going to begin with the two branches because everything pretty much centers around them. So I'm going to put the larger branch over on the right hand side, coming across the front of the moon a bit. And then I'll have the smaller branch coming in from the left hand side. And that one is also going to just barely overlap the bottom edge of the moon. It just helps integrate everything into the scene a bit more. I'm going to take the bat couple that is hanging and put them down at the bottom of the larger branch. And then I have that Santa and his sleigh with his reindeer, and I'm going to put that coming across the moon. So Santa has just come and visited, and he's going to be dropping off some gifts here. So I'm going to put the flying bat up in the sky, and then I'm going to take the little Santa hat and add that over his head, just placing it over one ear, kind of giving it a little bit of a shift to the left to make it look a bit more whimsical. And then I have this other flying bat that I wanted down toward the bottom of the scene, but I only set him down carefully because I wanted to make sure that I had room for my sentiment strip, and I didn't. So I was going to have to do a little bit of adjusting, and it did tear up my cardstock, so I had to be really careful just to shift that a little bit so you wouldn't really see it. And then I could add my bat over toward the left of that sentiment strip. I'm going to put the word Christmas right below it, just making sure that that's on there nice and straight. And then I have the little trio of gifts that I'm going to add to the larger branch. I'm going to hang the two stockings next to my bat couple over to the left of them. So they've got their stockings set out. So Santa has filled those since he's already been by, but just everything is kind of down below where you can't see inside. I'm going to put 2 of the ornaments hanging from the lower branch, although I decided to switch out the green one and add that to the top branch so that I could have the red one down below. I didn't want the red ornament right next to the red stockings. I preferred to break up that color and have it in different pops here and there. I'm going to put the single gift on the smaller branch, and then I had this little candy cane that I wanted the bat that's down lower to be holding, so I'm going to tuck that between his little wings. Then I wanted to add a bit of sparkle, so I'm going to take some Stardust stickles and add that to the white parts of the Santa hat and the stockings, and then also to all the ribbons on the gifts and the center stripes on the ornaments. And then I felt like the scene was kind of a little bit off balance, like it needed something else at the top. So I decided to just add like a North Star at the top. I think my white gel pen had a little bit of difficulty going over that Distress Oxide ink, but I just went over it twice to make sure that it was there. And that is going to finish up this card. So I'm going to lift that up so you can see all of that sparkle and give you another peek at the inside. I really love how this one turned out, so I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button and leave me a comment down below so we can chat about it. Thank you guys so much for spending your time with me today. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.